Hey guys, my name is Justin Beck. I'm here in New York City at 343 Labs, and today I'm going to show you how to make house music. Now, I know you might be thinking, what do you mean, house music? Well, don't worry, because we're just gonna give you a basic kind of template of the classic style of the genre for where it comes from, right? There are tons of different strains of house music. I myself got my start producing records and releasing records on the legendary Todd Terry's label, who is responsible for basically inventing house music in New York City. And so today what I'm gonna be demonstrating is something very a la Todd Terry. It's also gonna have its roots in Chicago house, which is something that influenced him extremely. And there's even gonna be maybe elements of what you might describe as UK, right, involved in it. So let's jump right in. First of all, I have here a full loop, and I'm gonna play it for you, and then I'm gonna kind of walk through the steps of putting this together. All right, cool. So, the very first thing with house music, before you get to your bass line, before you get to your chord stabs, anything like that, right, is what happens in the hi-hats. So we're gonna jump right in there, okay? And I'm gonna explain to you how you get that jacking house vibe immediately. It's very straightforward, but if you don't know how to do it, you're kind of always gonna be like, what? How do they get this sound? All right, so the very first thing you do, right, is pull up some 909s. Right? 909 hi-hats are the quintessence of the house music sound. Right? This is the drum machine that really started it all in this genre. So what I'm gonna have is a tight hi-hat, a medium hi-hat, and then an open hi-hat, right? And the way that I've arranged these is as follows. Okay, so very simple, right? Now, this will sound very different if it's not swung, right? So the very first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a groove that has 16th note relationships. So what I mean by that is there should be multiple instances where there are hi-hats that are separated only by a division of a 16th note. And the reason for that is because I'm gonna come into Ableton's groove pool, and I'm gonna select a groove that has some nice swing to it. I'm gonna apply it to my hi-hats, right? So as you can see, I've selected from two different grooves. And if we click on this one, we can hear we have that nice little giddy up kind of vibe, right? Which is what swing is. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna apply that, right, to my groove, and I'm gonna make sure that we now have that swing vibe on it, right? So if I throw the kick back in, which, believe it or not, is also 909, right, we immediately have that house vibe. So all I need to do now is throw that clap back in. And right there, we just have a super basic kind of prototypical house groove, right? Once I have my beat together, the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna find a vocal sample, right? And so for house music, the most classic thing is to grab like a female gospel or soul or disco vocal of some sort, right? It's a little cliche, I'm not gonna lie, but when done properly, it just kind of gives you that instant classic house music vibe. So I grabbed a sample from Lolita Holloway called Love Sensation. So the next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add in some chord stabs. right? So this is like a super, standard kind of house chord thing. So all that these are minor chords, right? A lot of the time with house music, you'll have minor sevenths or major sevenths, but you can also just have a minor chord. And this kind of gives you almost like a jazzier vibe, believe it or not, because what you can do is you can get away with using smaller intervals that creates kind of interesting tensions. So if we listen to the beat now with the chord stabs in, right? We have a very, very classic kind of Chicago vibe. So the other thing I should point out with the chords, right, is I've sent them to a delay on a return track. And using return tracks for house music is super important, actually, because what it allows us to do is it allows us to retain the power of all of our sounds, which we want with house music. So that's the whole point. We want power and drive while also getting effects in there, right? So if I solo my delay, we hear what's coming through, right? So now, of course, the final step is to add the bass line. Now, this is where actually most things go wrong. There's a very simple way to make a house music bass line. And to the same extent, there's a very simple way to add chords on top of that. Now, I chose to start with chords. That's just the process I used this time. If you're using a bass line, what I'm about to say also holds true entirely. So what you want to do is take the groove of your chords, right? And what you want to do is take that groove and literally just mirror it in your bass line. Hit those exact same notes. This is the secret to house music, right? Find a basic groove and accentuate different points of that groove at a different moment. But don't try to add a bass line that has a completely different rhythm than your chords. It's going to throw the whole thing off. It's not going to quite gel together. So if we listen to the bass line I added in now, we can hear it's perfectly underneath those chords, right? Not fighting at all. It feels like it's working together as one unit. Right? So now the reason that that is so useful as a kind of technique is because I could take away my chords at any moment and it still feels like it's the same track. Right? So I'm letting it ride out. Maybe now in this part, in this section, I take out the chords. And now that's just useful because what it allows you to do is use each element to play with energy, right? And that's what house music really is all about. It's about playing with energy. And so on that note, in fact, one final thing that I've added for this, just for like arrangement purposes, that's super useful, is a sustained string. Right? This is like a very classic kind of style and technique in house music. So if we listen to this now, right? You probably recognize that from almost every house song you ever listened to. And so if we put that all together now, right? We can make a really, really quick arrangement just from these pieces that we have here, right? All we have to do is start with the beat, and then we'll bring in the stabs, and then we'll bring in the bass line. So you start, right, just like this, for 8 bars. I'm not gonna make you listen to all that. So now we skip ahead, right, to the 9th bar. Maybe pull out the bass kicks for this last part. Right? And that's honestly just the basic structure of house music. Now, if we want to make this groove jump a little bit more, right? One thing that you might have noticed in the video, earlier in the video, is I muted some snares. Right? These are just, again, some 909 snares. And this is a great way to kind of just make your groove jump a little bit more, right? So you start without the snares, and then when the snares come in, it gives it that little bit of extra. And notice I actually have my snares in the same MIDI file as my hats. And the reason for that is because I want them to have the exact same type of swing, right? The whole idea with house music that most people don't fully understand when they're starting to try to make it is everything has to work cohesively as one unit. You really want it to come across like it's one groove. You don't want to hear every different part distinctly necessarily. You want it to just come together as this like intermeshing, interwoven big vibe, right? So the last thing maybe I'll just come in and show you is how to get your bass line, right, to be rounded off and powerful. And again, what I'm about to say, most people who are starting in this field mess up, and even on an intermediate level. When you're designing your house music bass line, right, whether it's house, techno, deep house, whatever vibe it is, if it's dance music though and it has the word house in it, what you're honestly gonna wanna do is only use one oscillator on your bass. There's a reason for this. When you use more than one oscillator, they actually phase. And what ends up happening is you get little moments of phase cancellation where the super low end power gets lost and it kind of comes in and out. So when you just have one waveform, and honestly, most of the time, if you choose a square wave, you're gonna be in the best shape because that most resembles the harmonic characteristics of a sine wave, then you're gonna have a very powerful bass line. And all you really need to do is roll your cutoff way down, turn up your resonance just a little bit, and have some envelope activity, right? And you get that nice, something that's stabby, but also powerful at the same time, right? All right, so then we add that string back in. Maybe take out the kick for a second. All right, then we're right back in it. Super simple. As someone once said to me, house music is all about just getting your simple parts, the rest is gravy. Thanks for tuning into this tutorial on how to make house music. Again, my name is Justin Beck, and I'm here at 343 Labs. We are a music production school in New York City and online. If you like the video and want more tutorials, click the subscribe link below and visit our website if you're interested in taking a class.